any percent, the most widely known term in speedrunning. To beat a game from start to finish as fast as possible within the game's constraints, the essence of speedrunning. For some games, this definition changes as new glitches get discovered. Some of these glitches are so groundbreaking that it completely changes how a game is played. Over the years, Yoshi's Island underwent a massive change. From little skips that skip small portions of a level or even some bosses, to totally reprogramming the game itself. Today, we will take a look at how and when these glitches were discovered and how they changed the any percent categories of Yoshi's Island. So, in the last video, the world record history of Yoshi's Island, we talked about how Warpless is essentially the no major glitches category of the game. To get a better idea on how Warpless has progressed, I highly recommend checking out that video. But what got discovered to warrant separating into the many categories we see today? In that video, we also briefly glossed over the first major glitch discovery, 1-1 warps. The area that Yoshi is sent to when he enters a pipe or screen transition is dependent on where Yoshi actually is and not which pipe or screen transition he has entered. The goal is to trigger a room change while Yoshi is outside of the intended loading zone. This means that entering a pipe from a different position than normal can result in Yoshi being sent to the coordinates 0, 0, which is the top left corner of the first level, 1, 1. If you just fall off at the bottom of the screen, you will actually die. You need to flutter 9 times while holding right, and then you will be back in the level and you can finish it. But because you went into a different level on the map, the game thinks that you have beaten that level instead of 1-1. Let's have a quick look at when this trick was performed for the first time. The first time we actually see the 1-1 warp being used is in a task from 2005. A task is a tool-assisted speedrun, which means that the creator of the run is using an emulator with tools such as slowdown, save states, and frame advance to make inputs for a theoretical perfect speedrun. This is actually quite a common phenomenon for newly discovered glitches, which are considered too hard for real-time speedruns until they become better understood later on. Let's have a look into where a 1-1 warp is practically useful. As previously mentioned, you still have to do most of 1-1. So if a warp is right at the end of the level, sometimes it is better to just play through the level instead. The first 1-1 warp we will see is in the level 1-4. This warp is quite easy to set up. All you have to do is go into this pipe. You then wait until this spark moves a little to the left. While aiming right, you intentionally run into it so Mario flies to the right. Then you land on the ledge above it, jump up so Yoshi is above the screen exit, collect Mario again, and it will warp you back to 1-1. After fluttering 9 times, you finish the level, but because you went into 1-4, you will skip the first boss fight of the game. This warp can save you around 29 seconds. The next warp we see is in 2-1. This one requires a frame-perfect input. If you can manage to do it on your first try, you will skip a long Tetris-like section in the third room. All you have to do for this warp is press down and jump on the same frame. Yoshi will be offset from the pipe entry and you will be sent back to 1-1. This warp saves another 48 seconds. The next warp is a little bit trickier, but it will also let us skip another boss fight. In 2-4 in the second room, if you get to this pipe, and respawn the boobla so that it comes towards the pipe, then jump onto it right as you go into the pipe, Yoshi will be pushed up ever so slightly that it will also trigger a 1-1 warp. Because we skipped most of 2-4, including the big boo boss fight, this saves around 27 seconds. The next warp is a little weirder. In 3-1 we don't have to set up a particular glitch. All we need is to jump on this monkey and then flutter to the right. There's actually a normal room transition here, but because you go into the transition from above rather than from below, you will be warped to 1-1. The warp in 4-7 is fairly simple to perform and can honestly be hit on accident. All you have to do is shoot this foam and bounce up while going to the left. This warp actually only saves 1 second, so it really demonstrates that completing most of 1-1 again can be a big time save for some levels and do way less for others. Now we see the biggest time save for this category. As mentioned in the last video, 5-4 usually has a long auto-scrolling section. But just like in Warpless, Warps also has a way of skipping it. This is probably the hardest warp to pull off. The warp will be performed right in the first room. You have to make sure to grab a Shy Guy because it will be used for an extended flutter. You then run onto this pipe, spit the Shy Guy onto the spikes, shoot 2 neutral eggs to destroy the spikes, jump off of the Shy Guy while aiming upwards, fall through the hole in the ground, start fluttering, and then you will enter the pipe from the bottom. Did you catch all of that? This is extremely tricky to perform, because for the B input you only have a 2-frame window, but you can have a few attempts at this before you start losing time. Compared to the 5-4 skip of the Warpless category, this saves a massive 2 minutes and 12 seconds, and compared to a Warpless completion without doing 5-4 skip, it saves over 3.5 minutes. So, with every warp combined, we're looking at a total time save of 4 minutes and 7 seconds when compared to a Warpless run that gets an optimal 5-4 skip. You may think now that a 1-1 warps is the only major glitch that's allowed in warps and banned in Warpless. However, there is one more thing. This is a tongue glitch, and it will be used for 3-3. It is a little tricky to set up. First of all, we need something that will turn enemies into a star. This can be achieved with a POW block from the inventory, but because we avoid all bonuses, we need to use a big egg from a big Shy Guy. Since there are no big Shy Guys in 3-3, we need to bring a big egg all the way from 2-7. In order to do this, you need to perform a so-called backstir by throwing the egg up and tonguing it so it lands where the next Yoshi will grab it. If we would just run into the goal with the big egg, it would poof and we would lose it before we could do anything with it. We then need to perform this backstir 2 more times in 3-1 and 3-2. For 2-8, you simply aim with the big egg before the boss falls off. Once we are on the second screen of 3-3, we can start performing the glitch. Grab any enemy, throw the big egg into the air and spit out the enemy right before the big egg lands. This will activate the first phase of the tongue glitch, where Yoshi both does and does not have something in his mouth. Next, go to where the Shy Guys are on the red bridge. Tongue and get hit when Yoshi's tongue is fully extended. This will activate the second phase of the tongue glitch and turn Yoshi and Baby Mario invisible as a result. But how exactly does the tongue glitch work? You see, by turning the enemy into a star right as we spit it out, the game thinks Yoshi has both the enemy and the star held in its mouth, which leads to a glitched state. Yoshi's cheeks are bulged, but pressing Y results in a tonguing action. By then getting hit as the tongue is fully extended, Yoshi's tongue retracts past Yoshi's body, extending negatively towards the infinite. This basically makes the game keep writing OAM buffer data for the tongue, but never stopping and going way beyond the normal table. Eventually, it will corrupt the terrain. Reclaim Baby Mario and do a full jump, followed by 3 flutters to enter the helicopter bubble. Once you transform into the helicopter, the map should be rearranged, allowing you to fly to the right and enter the mid-ring. After you get the mid-ring, hold down to die and then respawn. You have now successfully skipped the submarine room. This maneuver can be a bit tricky, because if you need too long to reach the mid-ring, the game will crash, but it ends up saving us around 20 seconds. So with all these tricks for warps now explained, when was the first time we actually saw a run? We already saw most of the tricks in the TAS, but it wasn't until 2011 that someone attempted a full game run. And this person is no stranger to Yoshi's Island. Carl Sagan, 42. Of course, not every single one of these warps have been known about right from the beginning. Some have only been found later on. but he finished the first ever Warps run with a time of 1:51:10 on the 30th of May 2011. But as you can imagine, it was a really unoptimized run, and it was just a showcase of what was possible with all of these new tricks. Over the next few years, more and more tricks would be discovered, and we would see many familiar faces trade the world record back and forth. The runners Carl, Mai, Beakle, MT, Crispy, Trix, Andy Kuma, and Saku GHD all held the world record sometime between 2011 and 2018. The most recent world record stands at a 1:35:43, set by Saku on the 28th of May 2018. This is where the chapter for Warps ends, but the story for any percent is far from over. There are more and way crazier glitches to be shown, so let us go on a magical journey. Do you see this little Mouser with an egg? He is kinda special. If you collect his egg without killing him and then finish the level, the game crashes. But why does that happen? For a long time, Yoshi runners did not know what caused the crash. Beakle, a Yoshi runner from 2013, used to crash here a lot during races. This frustrated a lot of runners because no one really knew why this happened until Arna the Great looked into it. As it turns out, what actually happens when you grab the egg but not kill the little Mouser and despawn him quickly is that the egg will also despawn because it is tied to the Mouser sprite. When this happens, it creates an open sprite slot in your egg inventory, a so-called null egg. This slot is subsequently filled by the next sprite that loads in, even if it's a non-egg sprite like an enemy or collectible. Since sprites being loaded into the egg inventory in this way is not supported by the game, it usually results in a crash. Now, how could this be useful if it mostly crashes the game? With how the null egg works, whatever sprite spawns in that sprite slot, that sprite will be put into your egg slots. That includes enemies. So when you just run to the end in 2-2, after grabbing the null egg, you would have this piranha plant in your egg slot, and that's what results in a crash. A way to avoid this is to do a little setup. By running up the slope, killing the two Mousers that come out of the hole, and then scrolling the screen up at a certain spot, you will spawn a little skull Mouser at the top of the screen. If the sprite slots are set up in the right way, the little skull Mouser is now in your egg slots, and you can finish the level without crashing. But what can we do with this? Like I said earlier, whatever sprite spawns in the sprite slot will be put in your egg slots. You know what's a useful sprite for us to use? Let's go back to 1.8 real quick. Once we defeat Salvo a second time, the boss key will spawn. And you know what that means? That boss key is now in our egg slots. And now we can go back to 2.3 and start our magical journey. As you can see, once we go into a level, the boss key gets activated and the level will be beaten immediately. We can do that for every single level moving forward. And as you can imagine, this saves time. A lot of time. Thus, the newest any percent category was born, Magical Journey. With this glitch, we don't really have to play the levels anymore. No more auto-scrollers, no more boss fights. All you need to do is specific setups for a lot of stages. And this is where the true difficulty for this category lies. Here's how a level goes. You go into a level, the boss key gets activated, Yoshi flies to the end of the current room, and then the sprite slot with the boss key gets freed up. If a different sprite spawns in that slot, the boss key gets replaced and we would lose it. And knowing this, we want to make sure to not let another sprite spawn in that slot. Let's have a look at a few levels to see how this category works. Some of the early levels are pretty straightforward. You don't have to do much of a setup. Yoshi will just fly to the end of the level and the level gets beaten without much of a problem. For example, here in 2.8 we can see that you just need to stand here and wait until the level finishes itself. And for some levels, there are different strategies depending on if you want to go safe or a faster route. 2.5 is a level that you can finish in two different ways. You either don't do anything, fly to the end of the level and you're good to go. But if you want to save 20 seconds, you need to do a precise ground pound to clear the foam and then flutter under the level. This way, the level gets beaten instantly. However, it is quite easy to either ground pound to your death or flutter too far left, which results in your boss key getting replaced by the shell. Some of the setups in the levels can be tricky to perform. You can get stuck in certain spots, or if a piranha plant is in your path, it will eat you and you will lose the boss key. For example, in 3-8, you need to finish the level in the second room. If you don't do anything here, you will get stuck because of the caged ghost and soft lock until you reset the game. You need to hit it at a precise time in order to finish the level quickly. In the level 4-1, you need to run far enough into the level and spit a shell at the right time in order to kill a piranha plant. In the level 5-1, you need to jump on this Lacto cloud so Yoshi won't run to the right. There are dozens of setups for every single level, and remembering all of them can be quite a challenge in itself. Of course, at the end we still need to beat Bowser and get to the credit sequence, so let's have a look at the last two levels. In 6-7, you will want to flutter under the level. There's two reasons for that. First, the level will be beaten instantly, instead of having to wait to fly all the way to the end of the room. The second reason is that you don't want the boss key anymore. If you have the boss key in 6-8, you will beat the level, but not actually trigger the credits. Thus, the run won't be considered a finished run. If you flutter under the level in 6-7, the boss key will get replaced by the shark chomp, so we don't have it anymore for 6-8. If we go into 6-8 now, we can see that the boss key is gone, and that the background looks a little different. That is because of the shark chomp. So we can go through the first room normally, and at the end of the room we will have the mid ring in our egg slots. If we go into the second room now, the mid ring gets spawned. We collect it, go into door 1 preferably, and then die. Seeing as we collected a second mid ring, which is normally right before the baby Bowser fight, the game thinks we collected that one, and by dying and retrying, we get put right into the baby Bowser fight, skipping the long Kamek autoscroller. And from here we can finish the game normally. As it turns out, you will need to learn a lot of setups for every level to be able to finish a run. And with all of this, we can shave off over a whole hour, making it easy to beat it under 1 hour. The first time someone ever finished a run of this was Carl Sagan in early 2013 with a time of 1:29:15. And over the following years, people like MT, Nathan Eel, Suwaku, and Shadow Chimera have held the world record, improving it by a whole 50 minutes, with the current world record standing at a 39:55 by Shadow, which was set on the 10th of March 2021. But once again, this was not the end for any percent as a category. On a fateful day in February of 2015, MT was doing magical journey attempts. He was just on a normal run, but he lost the boss key somewhere in World 3. He reset the game to start a new run, but after checking the file, he saw that he unlocked level 5-2 seemingly out of nowhere. But what had happened? It seemed that the save file was corrupted in a weird way that allowed unlocking levels that shouldn't be unlocked yet. Once again, Arne the Great looked into it and found that level 3-1 was at fault. 3-1 is a special level. The reason why it is special is because the effects in its background layer 3 are processed in a specific routine by the Super FX chip. So how exactly does this work? When a boss key is in your inventory due to the null egg glitch, its main routine gets run every frame, just as any eggs would. Of course, this is gonna have unintended consequences in any part of the game that is not an actual post-boss fight. If the boss key routine runs every frame, it starts to affect the background layer 3 vertical position, as it would normally during the cinematic after beating a boss, which means that the background layer 3 goes negative. Levels with certain background layer 3 tile sets do things based on its Y position. Once it goes negative, the garbage data is used instead. When this happens, the Super FX chip jumps to the middle of a drawing routine. This will end up corrupting the save file. So what exactly does this mean? You need to finish level 3-1 with a certain camera X value, You then reset the console, and if you've done it right, you unlock level 6-8, skipping over World 3, 4, 5, and most of World 6. You wouldn't have to always unlock level 6-8. You can also unlock any other level in World 6 except 6-1 and 6-7. If the cursor is on a level that is not 6-1 without unlocking it, and you then press left, the cursor glitches out and you can enter 6-3. You then collect this one coin and die. You then repeat the same step on the map, but now it will send you to 6-8 because you collected that one coin. Clearly, this is slower than unlocking 6-8 right away, but for the first run it was good enough and you could still finish a run like that. So after some experimenting, MT started doing some runs and he got results pretty quickly. On the 2nd of March 2015, MT finished the first any percent no ACE run with a time of 35:26, already 4 minutes faster than the current Magical Journey world record. This was then improved on very quickly. On the same day, he managed to improve it by 8 more minutes, ultimately landing at a 27:22. However, that wasn't even all for no ACE. Over the years, new strategies have been found. The first big problem was that the save corruption in 3.1 was very inconsistent. You need your camera X to be a very specific value. Depending on which value you get, you unlock a different level. For most of the early days of the category, runners had no real setup for it. You would just jump into the hole and hope that you hit the right value. After a few years of research, a consistent spot had been found. All you have to do is turn around once you start falling off this branch and then flutter when you hit the wall. The camera will always end up in the same spot and thus always result in a 6-8 unlock. But what if there were a different level earlier in the game where you could also unlock 6-8? In late 2019, Poar found that you can do exactly that in the last room of 2-6. However, because it is in the last room, it is a lot harder than 3.1. By throwing your eggs, you can delay the activation of the boss key. If you do that in the right spots and go fast enough, you can get through every room. You then do the same kind of camera manipulation here, always wanting the same camera X value to unlock 6-8. Sadly, you don't have any walls to line it up here, so you have to do a buffered flutter out of the water and hope that you hit it. This strat saves around a minute, but is a lot more difficult to pull off. But there is even more to this. Remember how I said that you could put any sprite into your X slots with the help of the null egg? Then what if we got 2 null eggs and defeated Salvo again? It is not just the boss key that spawns as a sprite at the end of the fight, the boss explosion does too. So if we set up the sprite slots in the right way, we now have the boss explosion in the first null egg and the boss key in the second null egg. And what does that give us? The ability to finish the levels even faster. Unlike the boss key with the boss explosion, Yoshi doesn't have to run to the end of the room to finish the level. The level just gets beaten immediately. For a long time, this strat seemed to not be usable for this. 2.6 needs a long time to load, and if the boss explosion finishes the level before it loads, you die. But after some research from Shadow, it was found that the seesaw log in 2.5 actually replaces the boss explosion. And this is perfect for no ACE. We can now finish 2.3, 2.4 and 2.5 way faster, and then do 2.6 normally for the save corruption. This ends up saving an additional 20 seconds, which is huge in a run that doesn't even take half an hour. So with the help of 2.6 and the boss explosion, you could now finish no ACE 1 minute and 20 seconds faster. The world record has only been improved a few times since 2015, with MT, Poar and Volpey trading the record a few times. But with the help of these 2 new strats and a lot of research, it now stands at a 25:42, set by Volpey on September 29, 2021. Yet still, no ACE wouldn't remain the fastest way to beat the game. And there's a reason why the prior category is called no ACE. If there is no ACE, there must also be an ACE run. And what does that stand for? arbitrary code execution to warp to the credits. ACE is very complicated. It doesn't just happen by accident. It needed years of research, understanding every bit of the game. And that is exactly what Arne did in early 2015. He spent several weeks coming up with a route and a way to execute it in real time. Now, how does ACE work in Yoshi's Island? I'm gonna use a document by Carl to explain it here. To perform the credits warp, we need to use the tongue glitch again, just like in 3.3. But this time, we don't want it to rearrange level tiles, but rather to execute instructions from the memory addresses associated with sprite positions, because sprite positions can be changed, allowing whatever code you want to be executed. By positioning various sprites at sub-pixel perfect locations and then performing the tongue glitch, a sequence of instructions is used to run the credits. In short, you can manipulate sprite slots and shoot your eggs in very specific ways, perform the tongue glitch in 1.2, which then allows you to warp to the credits. On the 20th of April 2015, Carl was the first person to finish a credits warp run in real time with a time of 4 minutes and 43 seconds. It was now possible to beat Yoshi's Island in just under 5 minutes. And the biggest time improvements for runs like these come from routing. Usually just by trying over and over, always finding faster ways to set up the memory in a specific way. For example, for the first run, you actually needed to go into this cave to set up some values, resulting in warping to a different part of the credits. Despite all that, it didn't take long to cut Carl's time almost in half. By May, new route improvements made it possible to beat the game in under 3 minutes. Over the last few years, Poar came up with several route improvements. For example, skipping having to go into the cave. Let's have a look at a run like that. As he goes into 1-1, we can see right away that he starts setting up the sprite slots. By shooting flowers or killing enemies, certain sprite slots will be freed up. He then wants to stand at a very specific X coordinate and shoot X at a very specific angle. And that is already it for 1-1. Next up is 1-2. The way to set up the tongue glitch here is to take an enemy, run through the mid-ring, and spit it out right as it gets turned into a star. He then stands right next to the pipe, gets hit by a shy guy while the tongue is fully extended, so it keeps going and going until the setup values get executed, resulting in a credits warp. Since 2015, people such as Carl, IsoFreeze, Davis, MT, Akasatana, Icterus and Poar have held the world record for the credits warp category of Yoshi's Island. And with Poar holding the current world record with a time of 2 minutes and 19 seconds set on the 8th of June 2020, the credits of the game are now longer than the fastest 80% run itself. So, as mentioned at the beginning of the video, new glitches can break a game in a way previously unimaginable. Over the years, Yoshi's Island went from a 2-hour game down to a 2-minute game, with some glitches that were found completely by accident or particular research over several weeks to years. Each glitch changes the game in a significant way, making each run unique, needing a different set of skills to pull it off. These days, every single one of these categories discussed in the video has their own leaderboards, with different world record holders for each one. Warpless needs a lot of stamina over a longer period of time, making small time losses less significant. Credits warp, on the other hand, requires that you're trying to save every single frame. With every category being so different, there really is a category for everyone, whether you like the longer endurance runs or the shorter precise runs. And that is the history of Yoshi's Island 80%. Thank you for watching.